Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime Symbol. And I'm back with something new for you guys to enjoy. Today I'm going to be giving you what if Naruto had all the blood demon arts from Demon Slayer guys. Yes, when I say all I mean all of them. Imagine Naruto imbued with the power of all the blood demon arts. So yeah, sit back, relax, and I hope you guys enjoy. And don't forget to go ahead and check out the brand new episode over on the other channels if you're new. Yes, I indeed have 4 channels which I post what if on every single day for you guys to enjoy. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button and become a part of the Anime King family. So without further ado or wasting more time, how about we jump right into this brand new episode? Let us begin now guys. We begin this new series at the most powerful nation, known as the Hidden Leaf, situated within the Land of Fire. The elemental nation was made up of 5 great nations, with the Hidden Leaf being the most powerfulest. There were smaller nations, but their power just did not compare to the main 5. Located within the red light district of Konoha, the red light district was the low maintenance area of the village. There was no clans that situated nearby. All of the clans and the rich families were in the upper district. Situated in a rather large building, which was an apartment complex, was a boy. As he was on the highest floor, he sat by the window as the rain was pelting down on the village. His gaze fixated on whatever he could see. His blue eyes looking rather dull. This boy was Naruto Uzumaki. He was a special child in more ways than one. As Naruto got up and made his way, his reflection in the mirror caught his attention for a moment. But he barely glanced at it, himself to be quite exact. He possessed blonde hair. However, his hair color was extremely pale, and it was smooth and curly, with 2 curly bands coming down at the side of his face, the rest of it resting down on the back of his head. He possessed blue eyes. His iris was blue. However, unlike most people who had round pupils, his was slitted like a reptile. It was larger than a snake, more curved, but it was definitely slitted downwards, giving him a rather dangerous look, and that matched with his skin tone. His skin color was pale, making him look a bit sickly. He was 10 years old, the average size of a 10-year-old boy. His steps were calm and weak. From birth, Naruto Uzumaki faced challenges, a lot of challenges that had stunted his growth. Not physically, but to ever escape the confines of the reality that he's fated to live. And there was nothing that he could do about it. As he made his way, he came to a stop. There was a large portrait. As the painting was still drying, it was done by him. He possessed excellent memory. Even seeing something just once, he could close his eyes and depict everything about what he saw. That is why his apartment was filled with a lot of canvas that he drew on. Many things that were in the village. So many things. All of them that he saw at night. He glanced towards the window as the rain was still falling. The sun was not out, as the clouds had covered it, blocking the rays of the sun. While the sun was not really a big problem, his skin was sensitive. Therefore, being in the sun for a long time always getting rather itchy and, well, it left marks all over his body that started to hurt after a while. So he usually covered up a lot before heading out in the sun. All in all, though, he stopped, mostly taking walks at night to clear his head and simply observe the village. As he returned back to his canvas, there was a little bird at his window, nestling away from the rain, the covers providing it a good shade, as he started to paint the bird. Meanwhile that was going on, at the Hokage's office, an old man known as Hiruzen was looking at the rain pouring down. His mind ran on the young boy, Naruto Uzumaki. He knew the boy liked when it rained. The sun was always a problem for him. As Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, there was a lot that Naruto did not know. Since being brought into this world, they believed that it was because of the Nine Tails. It was a few hours after his birth when he lost everything. When that beast was sealed inside of him, everything started to go bad. Hiruzen took him to one of his best doctors. The child had to be hooked up to machines. As a baby, why does one child deserve to suffer that much? It has been 10 years since that day. Naruto had been in and out of the hospital on numerous occasions. Majority of the time his body just started to fail him. The doctors did everything they could to prolong his life. It has been over 8 months now. Things has been stable, but that did not take away that Naruto's body was incredibly weak. Hiruzen remembered the day when him and the child was speaking, and he asked about becoming a ninja because the life seemed so freeing. To leap from rooftop to rooftop, going on missions outside the village. Hiruzen had to break it to the boy there and then that his hopes and dreams of becoming a ninja would never be a reality. He saw the dreams, the hopes die right there in the boy's eyes. But he had to be straightforward. He didn't want to give him a false hope. For him to cling on to that would just bring him pain in the future. His body had been going strong for the last 8 months, as there has been no extensive visit to the hospital. But still, his body was unable to sustain itself for too long, in terms of walking or especially running. So his dream of becoming a ninja was something that would never happen. The doctors themselves could not explain it, but his body just always seemed to be attacking itself. For some reason, Hiruzen believed that this was because of the Nine Tails. He had spoken to Mito Uzumaki. She sealed the Nine Tails inside of her when she was old enough. Kushina had the beast sealed inside of her when she was old as well. Enough to understand what was going on, enough to talk, enough to be able to attend the academy. As for Naruto, the beast was placed inside of him when he was a baby. Hiruzen believed that it was too much for his system. That is why his body was trying, but failing. As he sighed to himself, he went by every now and then to pay the boy a visit or give him his monthly stipend. However, he always saw that look in his eyes, knowing that he hated the life that he lived. Majority of people did not know that the boy contained the Nine Tails, which was a stupid thing to do because, given Naruto's body and how weak it was, there was a chance that the beast could break free. But the last time he checked, the seal was still intact. However, Naruto has been in the hospital since day one, as Hiruzen had only told a select few about this, about the Nine Tails and what truly happened. Majority of people in the village believed that the beast had died that night. Hiruzen never thought that Naruto was going to live beyond a couple of months, so he never spilled the information to many, just a couple of people that he trusted. And now, here he was after 10 years, and the information was kept a secret. But he supposed as long as Naruto don't overexert himself or push himself, everything shall be fine. He supposed everything shall be fine. As he returned back to his work, so that he could finish things up. Time skip. Later that night, the young boy finds himself walking through the streets of Konoha. He had on a black hood that hid most of his features away from the world. As he walked, black pants and sandals, his arms stuffed in the side pocket. He was merely walking around the village. It was only at night that he felt invigorating enough to take in the sights, despite the place being dark. However, Konoha does possess a very illuminating amount of street lights. He glanced around, hearing movements, but it was just an animal. The red light district might seem scary to many others, but this was his home. He's lived there for as long as he could remember, so he did not see it as scary at all. However, his hearing picked up on something. He turned his gaze as he slowly followed the sound as he arrived towards an alleyway. The sight that he saw shocked him as he momentarily froze up. A girl, who seemed to be in her mid-20s, was struggling to escape. There was a man, dressed in a hood that was similar to his. As he was covering her mouth, she was barely releasing loud squeaks as she tried to pry his arm off. Naruto realized that he was trying to take her clothing off. As he realized what the man wanted to do, while he might be young, given his inactivity, he mostly focused on books. So he knew a lot, and he knew what was going to happen if he did not do anything, and there was no one else around. Instincts kicked in as his body seemingly moved on its own to help. Naruto quickly stepped out. "Hey, leave her alone," he shouted. His voice wasn't that strong though. The man turned as he looked towards Naruto, causing the girl to move her hand hard and tear his hood off, exposing his face, causing him to curse. The girl swinged at him as she tried to escape, but he backhanded her as she slammed against a dumpster hard. "Leave her alone," Naruto shouted, causing the man to reach into his pocket as he pulled something out. It was a blade, a short-handled blade. "Damn it, you damn brat. Why couldn't you just walk away?" As Naruto started to back away, looking towards the weapon in the man's hand. "And now that you've seen my face, I can't allow you to just leave like that. Let her go, and I won't tell anyone," Naruto said, as he started to worry and panic as he looked at the blade in the man's hand. However, the girl, she rose up and swung the metal pipe that she saw on the ground, hitting the man in the shoulder as she ran past him. She quickly shouted out towards Naruto to run as the both of them started to get out of there. The problem was the sight of the blade as Naruto was panicking. That alone was enough to affect his form. He was slow, immensely so. The girl was trying to get away. She didn't even stop as she simply ran, thinking that the kid was running as well. However, the man bested Naruto's speed easily as he gripped him and threw him into the wall. His hand was shaking. He didn't want it to do this, but the kid saw his face. What he was doing to that girl was a crime, and he didn't want to go to any damn prison. So he would have to get rid of the both of them. The brown-haired girl came to a stop as she looked behind her to see that the kid was not behind her, as emotion started to cloud her vision. She had to do something. She couldn't just leave him behind to die like that. That man was clearly insane. As she looked around, as she saw a piece of broken bottle, she was scared, yes, but that was a child who tried to help her. She picked up the bottle and rushed back towards where the man was. Meanwhile, as Naruto's back hit the solid wall, pain coursed through him as he collapsed down to his knees, fighting the instinct to remain conscious. The pain was unbearable. His body was extra sensitive. The man, on the other hand, simply thrust the blade forward, out of pure desperation and fear. He didn't want to do it, but he couldn't afford for the kid to blab. His hand was shaking as the blade stabbed into Naruto's side. Naruto looked down. As he screamed, the man quickly covering his mouth. As he held on to the kid to stop him from alerting anyone with his screams. That is when he heard something as he turned. The girl slashed at him, but he moved away just in time. However, the broken bottle tore a nasty gash across his face. Adrenaline was pumping as she rushed. She slammed right into him, but instead of going for the chest, the bottle slammed into his shoulder. He screamed out in pain. Naruto's vision was blurry as the both of them collapsed on the ground. The both of them fighting one another. As he sat there, was this it? Was he going to die? Naruto thought to himself. His life had been a miserable one. There was nothing remotely good about this life. Perhaps it was better this way. Perhaps he would be reborn. He read about that in a book. Some religion believe that after death, one would come back as something else or someone else. Perhaps in the other life, he would have parents, people that love and care for him, to be there. Yeah, that sounded a lot better than this life. As he felt his energy slipping away, his nose suddenly sniffed, on the verge of death, and yet he smelled this intoxicating aroma. What was it? He's never smelled anything so good before. As his body started to move on its own, the smell was so wonderful, so alluring, so amazing. The girl was thrown towards the ground, the man overpowering her. However, he was not doing so good, bleeding from the face, blood dripping down his arm. He was done, as his hand was perfectly still now, knowing that he couldn't allow her to live. He was moving towards her with a knife in his hand, when suddenly something jumped on his back, gaining strength where he didn't know where it came from, as the thing bit into his shoulder, tearing a huge chunk of flesh out. The man screamed. As he swung the thing off him, it crashed into the bin. He turned his gaze, holding on to his bleeding shoulder, as he was getting really dizzy because of the blood loss, so much of it. However, what he saw was two red eyes gazing back at him, and these eyes were not ordinary. They were red as they had small black veins inside of it. The pupil was shaped like two triangles connected together without a bottom, and it was black. The man was gripping onto his shoulder, screaming in pain. What the hell are you? He yelled at the child, who picked himself from the bin and stepped forward into the light. As there was a smile on his face, he reached up with one finger as he wiped the blood off his lips and placed said finger in his mouth. His eyes suddenly pulsated, and then it happened. All hell broke loose. Time skip. Naruto suddenly woke up, confused on what was going on. As his gaze fixated on his ceiling, well aware that it was his, he's seen it for the last couple of years of his life when waking up. He wondered though, what happened? He had no recollection of what happened to him. No recollection of what happened last night. And this was one of the first, because he had excellent memory. So this was pretty confusing. Why couldn't he remember where he was last night? He picked himself up. That is when he noticed his sheet was covered in a red substance. It was stained. Naruto's eyes widened as he backed away. Looking towards the mirror, he saw his face, covered in blood. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. His hands, his shirt. He looked around in a panic. His floor, everything was covered in blood. Naruto started to sweat, confused what happened last night, and what the hell was with all this blood. That is when he realized something that he had not noticed before. His face. His skin was still pale but not much as before. That made him look like he was going to die. And his cheeks, that were usually sunken in, were now like any normal child. But that was not all. Usually, the effort that it took to move around all of a sudden and jump up and down would be something that would leave him winded and tired, but now there was this rush, this energy that he could not explain, and then it started to return back to him. Naruto's eyes widened as he rushed to the bathroom and started to puke violently. The memories of what happened last night, him ripping someone's shoulders out, his very body started to tremble. As he puked, it didn't seem like he was going to stop anytime soon. Naruto collapsed on his bathroom floor, covered in sweat, his shirt stained with blood and puke. What the hell? Why did he do that? He remembered one moment smelling something so sweet. Wait, was it the blood? It had to be, right? But why? What was he? Was he some kind of monster? Who the hell feed on blood and flesh? That girl. What? Wait, the girl. What happened to her? Naruto gripped his skull as he started to remember. Flashback. What the hell are you? The man screamed out in fear as Naruto jumped. The man fell on his butt, however. That didn't do anything as strange sashes came out of Naruto's back. There was around 8 of them. Yes, they came from his back and shoot forward, purple and red. They wrapped around the man, lifting him in the air, yanking him towards Naruto, who lashed out with his hand and tore it right into his stomach. One wrapped around his mouth so that his screams would not emerge. The young lady was in the corner. She was deathly frightened of what she was witnessing. Naruto pulled his hand back before he proceeded to lick the blood off his hand. The girl got to her feet as she ran, trying to get out of there, when suddenly Naruto appeared in front of her. She fell over in fear, trying to get away from him. However, he held his hand out as thin, white strings. They started to slowly leave his fingertips. He then slashed at her. She tried to raise her hand in defense, but her hand was sliced through 5 times, causing her to scream until the threads wrapped around her and Naruto yanked it. It ripped her entire body apart, a piece of it being thrown towards him. He caught it before he sank his teeth into it and ripped. End of flashback. Naruto was mortified as the memories came back to him. He wasn't quite sure how he returned, but it seems like he returned home just off instincts alone. What he did to that poor woman. Meanwhile, that was going on. 2 envoys dressed in their standard clothing, as the both of them were standing under a shelter where the alley was. They came across something strange as they were doing their patrol. Rain was falling within Konoha as they saw a puddle of water settled, and it was red. It was blood. Upon checking the scene though, there was nothing there. Nothing that would show that anyone was even there. It was just blood alone. And if any evidence had been left behind, it would have been washed away by the rain already. As they found themselves stumped, unknowing what happened here. Meanwhile, for the rest of the day, Naruto found himself just sitting, leaned up against the wall, puking on occasion as he thought about what he did. He was mortified by his actions, afraid of himself. The only person that he really had as a friend, and it was a weird way to think of that as well, because the man was a very old man and he was a child. But he was the only person that he considered a friend. He was the Hokage of this village. He had no other friends because of his illness. He never really tried to make any, or go outside that much to even speak to any. But he couldn't tell the Hokage about this, because then the man would see him as a monster, and he would have nothing and no one left. and he didn't want that. He couldn't tell him. However, that was not the greatest problem that he faced. The greatest problem that he faced was a voice in the back of his head that was telling him that what he did was good. Despite knowing, he knew that it was bad, but there was a voice that enjoyed what he did. A voice that relished in the thought of him doing it again. And he was disgusted by that, truly and utterly so. But the voice, it just wouldn't go away. It kept on speaking to him, over and over, for him to indulge. Naruto picked himself up, as he decided that he had to get things cleaned up. He had to get rid of all the evidence, so he got to work, wiping up the blood. He stored his clothing and the sheet in a bag as he tied it up, as he placed it within the tub. He needed to get rid of this, or at least burn it. The moment that thought popped into his mind, Naruto felt his fingers tingling, as he then felt a sizzling sensation, and his hands combusted. Knowledge filled his mind, pyrokinesis, which allowed him to manipulate demonic flames. He had absolutely no idea how he knew that. However, his glowing hand combusted into flames. Pink flames that burn everything within the tub. Naruto was startled because, despite his hands being consumed with it, he was completely fine. That is when he looked up as he noticed his reflection. Naruto was shocked. His hand slowly reached up and touched his forehead where there was a horn jetting out of one side of his forehead. His shaky hand reached up and touched it before it sank back into his skull, and the flame stopped. His features were back to normal, leaving Naruto very confused, not quite understanding what the hell was happening to him. As he noticed before it vanished, strange tattoo-like markings over his body, but they disappeared a moment after. What the hell? Time skip. Later that night, once again Naruto snuck out. However, this was unlike the other times. He rushed through the forest at speeds that he never thought he would be able to move at. No short of breath, no tiredness. Naruto bent his knees and leaped. He slammed face first into a tree, underestimating the force of his jump. His head was what crashed into it as he fell. Naruto cried out in pain as he fell on a rather sharp piece of stone. He tried to move, but the pain was agony. As he rolled over, he reached as he saw blood on his finger. The next moment it vanished though. Naruto reached as he tried to find the wound, but there was nothing there. Confused, it healed, but so fast. A human should not be able to heal this fast. That just wasn't possible, he thought to himself. This was his first time being within this forest, and it seems his voice has caused actions to occur all around him. The animals. Naruto heard a growl as he turned to see a bear, at least 10 times his size, charging directly towards him. His first action was to freeze, out of utter fear, as he watched the monstrosity charge towards him. Naruto raised his hand as he realized the thing wasn't going to stop. What should he have expected though? Well, he was still a child, and rather scared one at the moment. The thing did not hesitate to bite down. Naruto's eyes went wide as he watched his arm ripped clean off, leaving nothing but a stump. He found himself mortified and shocked. However, he didn't have time to be shocked as the bear swiped. The animal seemed to be very ferocious. Its claws ripped across his face and his chest and his legs, given the size of the thing. His body was thrown back, looking like a bloody piece of stump. As Naruto lay against a tree, the thing wasn't finished, about to finish him off. Naruto had no idea where he was, and that was because he entered in a very dangerous forest, simply thrilled by the fact that he could run this fast He jumped over the gate without even taking a second look. This was known as the Forest of Death. Not even chonins are allowed inside without supervision, and Naruto was definitely not a chonin. The ferocious animal smelled the blood as it proceeded to get closer and closer. However, Naruto did not feel the pain as he thought he would. He watched as his body slowly start to fill in the gaps, and his arm, muscles, and bones coming together. Naruto saw the bear moving once again as he jumped. Without even thinking, instincts kicking in, he landed on top of the thing's head. This was the first time in his life that he felt this thrill as he was moving like this. Naruto held his hand out as his palm, which still had a few drops of blood on it, fell on top of the bear's head. When suddenly, it ignited. Naruto jumped back as the creature wailed and threw itself around, trying to get rid of the heat that was burning on top of its skull. The thing was moving around so much as Naruto jumped and landed in a tree nearby. Naruto landed on the ground as the thing saw him, seeing him as the one that did this as a charge, head first. Naruto felt something as he looked down to see a strange ball materialize in his hand. Confused by said ball, but Naruto sank his feet into the ground as he pulled his arm back. He started to pull his arm so tight that his muscles started to strain as veins started to pop up all over in his hand. He then thrust the ball with all of his might. The thing fired at blinding speed. The thing exploded through the bear's skull, leaving a gaping hole in the process. It did not even stop there. It slammed through several trees before bouncing on the ground, ricocheting back towards him as Naruto held his hand out. The thing slammed in his palm and spin for a few seconds as it started to generate heat, smoke leaving Naruto's palm. He was shocked. As the ball vanished, his palm was bruised up rather badly, but it healed within a matter of seconds. The mighty animal finally dropped, but the flames did not stop. They kept on burning the thing's hair. Naruto started to worry, believing that he was going to cause a wildfire soon enough. He needed to get rid of the flames, when suddenly he felt that tingle once again, and he went with it. This time, a vase. Water that shaped like a vase appeared and surrounded the bear, extinguishing the flames. Naruto watched as the water then disappeared soon after. He looked down toward his hands. He did that. Naruto wondered what truly was going on with him. One moment he was a very sick kid who could barely go anywhere, and now he's able to run at these speeds, gain strength that he could only dream of, and these abilities, they're coming out of nowhere. He was worried earlier that he took someone's life, someone that he was trying to save, but now he was not feeling the same way. He did not feel the emotion, guilt, but he should be feeling those emotions. Why didn't he care? Was he a monster, he thought to himself, shaking his head vigorously. Of course not. He wasn't a monster. Life was just finally giving him his turn. After all these years, being unable to make friends, being unable to do anything, become a ninja, go out in the world, do missions. Finally, life has taken a turn for the better, and he was in the driver's seat. He couldn't afford to pass up this opportunity. What he did was horrible and he would never do that again. But this was something that he had to focus on now. These powers. And how much of them does he possess? And this also meant he could become a ninja. He didn't have to waste his entire life just being alone and looking forward to death one day. He could do something better with his life. That actually brought tears to his eyes. Tears of joy. Time skip. Hiruzen was sitting within his office. It was a bright sunny day. As he sat down, he was going to pay Naruto a visit today. give him his monthly stipend, and see what he's been up to. As he proceeded to hurry up and finish what he was doing. Unaware to him though, right down below, Naruto was situated as he glanced up towards the building. Naruto was dressed with a white undershirt, but his jacket was over it, the hood up, hiding his face away from the world. The sun was still sensitive on his skin. Naruto bent his knees slightly as a lot of veins popped up in his legs. A smirk came on his face before the ground, crack, releasing spiderwebs, cracks all over. He then pushed off, clearing all the other windows. However, once again he underestimates the amount of power that he needed to use. The glass shattered against his skin as Naruto crashed inside. The moment that happened though, blades were all around him. A single move and they would take his life. Naruto wasn't expecting this. When he heard the voice, "Stand down," he heard. He turned his gaze towards Hiruzen, who was beyond shock. Naruto? Time skip. Hiruzen was seated. As between them there was a door that led to the doctor's office, his personal doctor. The man was inside with Naruto running tests on him to understand what has happened all of a sudden. Having Naruto burst through his window had came as a shock to him. Of all the people that he would expect, Naruto was never on that list. And when the child started to tell him what has happened to him, Hiruzen found them hard to believe. But Naruto was able to jump from down below straight up to the window. That alone was rather shocking upon itself. Naruto, the same child that has been in the hospital more than any other person on this planet. Hiruzen was shocked by it all. The door finally opened up as the doctor stepped outside. "What's happening?" Hiruzen said, eager to know. The man looked confused. I have to say, in my many years of medical expertise, I have never come across something like this. Or do I understand how is that boy alive? What do you mean? Hiruzen said, looking towards him. The former test that we ran on him, showing that his body has always been in a state of failing. Over the past 8 months, there has been good signs, but now, it's like it was kicked into overdrive. His blood had solidified all over his body. Normally, this would be known as a blood clot, which would have long since killed him, given the large number of clots that are all over his body. But after speaking to him while running these tests, I realized something, that he's able to manipulate his blood, but not just the frontal end of his blood, but every single part of it inside of his body. It moves around to his will and to his command and to his understanding, keeping his body from ever reaching a state of failure ever again. I am not sure what happened to him, but it seems like an outside stimulus that had been missing from his birth had finally been introduced to his blood, and now it's changing him little by little. His cells seem to be on hyperdrive. Everything about the boy showed to be normal, but on the inside, no normal person would have ever survived their body being reacted or moved like this. I'm just not sure what is going on, or how that he's even alive. From what I can see though, his cells and blood had been supercharged. I drew some of his blood, and the small nick that I gave him, it closed up within a matter of seconds. That's not all though. The doctor pulled out something. It was a bag. On the inside there was a broken syringe. Hiruzen looked at him. This is what happened when I tried to draw his blood safely. It imploded and somehow ignites the heat and radius that would be needed from a blood to burn like this without completely evaporating on sight should be impossible, but there you have it. If you're asking for my medical expertise on this subject, I must say that boy in there is a complete mystery that I myself cannot understand. But from what he's told me, this has come with a lot of beneficial side effects. But I truly believe that we are just at the beginning of what is truly going to happen to him. The doctor saw the look that Hiruzen gave him. No, I don't think that it is something bad, but actually something beneficial for him in the long run. But whatever this isn't chakra. This isn't any bloodline or anything like that. It is a kind of mutation that has never graced the elemental nation before. I truly believe that. And we are at the precedent of seeing something truly magnificent happen with this boy. The doctor said, sounding quite intrigued. After all, this was the breaking ground of something truly phenomenal. Time skip. Naruto stood in a field with his eyes closed as he took a deep breath. Suddenly, a kunai was hurled from the east. The obi sashes came from Naruto's back. As they lashed out and sliced the kunai in half, a shuriken was thrown from the west. Another sash came from Naruto's back and wrapped around it and crushed it. A hail of weapons were thrown from all different directions, as Naruto could feel them. The moment they reached a certain radius, his sashes came out and started to demolish them. One of them were thrown with an intense speed as Naruto reached up. Instead of the sashes, though, he caught it with his bare hand. Naruto opened his eyes as the thing had stabbed right in his palm. However, Naruto pulled it out with ease. It still hurt, but pain was becoming rather subjective lately, and it wasn't bothering him that much. A couple weeks has passed since he informed the Hokage of what had happened to him. Naruto did not inform the Hokage of anything revolving around the fact that he had killed 2 people, or that he had killed the bear, or the fact that he had ate those people. He kept that all to himself, not wanting the Hokage to know about that. After all, that was a one-time thing he told himself, and it will never happen again. He told himself. Ever since then, Hiruzen has been trying to understand the things that Naruto could do, because frankly some of them did not make any sense, as things were just materialized in front of him, like the balls that he was able to create and control. But it wasn't just that. It seems like, as the time passed, his body was experiencing changes and evolving, producing new abilities, and his mind was understanding what they were, as they all seemed to be a part of him, under his control to use and to bend as he see fit. It was late in the evening, so the sun was not up, as Naruto was without his jacket. The sun still bothered him despite his changes for the better, as it was still sensitive on his skin. He supposed that was something that would never truly go away. Naruto then opened back his eyes as something happened. A light blue snowflake appeared underneath his feet on the ground, the number 7 edge in the center. Naruto then ducked as he dodged the sword that swiped close to his head. He then turned and moved out of the way, dodging the blade once again. Her mass, shaped like a cat, she swiped at him once again. What was on the ground was something that he called compass needle. It allowed him to sense his opponent and how they will move, even at his blind spot. This girl, as she had purple hair, she was known by Cat. That is what she told him to call her. Hiruzen had pulled a few envus to test Naruto, because the more time passed, the more his body seemed to grow, as Hiruzen would like to know the limits to these abilities, and he wanted to know as well if Naruto's body would remain like this or would it return back to that state that it was before, which would eventually cancel out anything from him moving to a different level. Cat was rather ruthless though. After finding out that he could heal from basically anything, well, he's never got stabbed in the heart or his head cut off. Those would probably kill him, Naruto thought. He made a mistake when he was first fighting her. Well, they thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't really. He punched her blade, making her accidentally cut his arm off. He wanted them to see that his arm could regenerate, as he didn't tell Hiruzen about the bear incident. Therefore, Cat swept behind him as Naruto jumped away. Despite his new powers and his skills that he was developing, he was still not some kind of godly being that was untouchable. She sliced his calf before driving the blade right through his feet. She then proceeded to spin and send a kick right under his chin as she pulled her blade and sliced his tendons, forcing him to fall as she placed her blade at his throat. She had warned him on multiple occasions not to get cocky just because he could heal fast. As Hiruzen called the match, this was another test for Hiruzen to see just how much more control that he possessed and how much he's grown since, as it had been a couple of weeks. Cat was serious as ever as she took her standby pose, moving away from him and sheathing her blade. Naruto picked himself up as he was already healed. He supposed despite these new powers, he was still just a kid, and they were Onvus. They were supposed to be the best of best, he heard. As Hiruzen walked over towards him, as he asked him if he was alright, Naruto nodded. Hiruzen looked down towards the boy. Naruto has never been truly happy, and Hiruzen knew that. The amount of time that Naruto has smiled since he learned these things about himself has surpassed any time that he's ever smiled in the past. There was only one time Hiruzen saw him smile in the past, and that was when he gave him a rather special book. A book about an adventurer that traveled the entire world, exploring all sorts of things, as Naruto never could do that, so reading about it was the second best thing to do. But now the boy was so happy, incredibly so. Dr. Yamamoto was right. Perhaps this was just a blessing, something that would help this boy reach new heights and grow to levels that, well, was good for him, Hiruzen thought with a smile on his face, as he saw how excited the boy was. Time skip. Hiruzen sat in his office. He had recently spoken to Iruka, telling him that he would have a new addition within his class. His name was Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka did not know. There was only a select few that knew, so no one would ever see Naruto as a problem. Hiruzen was now worried if Naruto was going to become a ninja. The problem about the Nine Tails was going to come into play one day, and the world was under the belief that the beast was gone, but that was not true. However, he didn't want to take away Naruto's chance of having a normal childhood. That was almost taken away from him forever. But whatever gods out there had laid a blessing down on him that had changed that. So Hiruzen was going to keep the information and not allow it to go public in order to have Naruto have a happy childhood and meet friends that he could call, well, friends. Yes, that is what he was going to do. The testing was to make sure that Naruto had a grasp on these new abilities. While your Chunin and Jonin could handle themselves, children could not, and Hiruzen did not want Naruto accidentally hurting or killing someone. So he gave him specific orders on not to use these abilities against any of the children at the academy. For now, he would just keep them to himself until he graduated and become a shinobi. And he must also pull his punches as well, because he has developed an extreme amount of muscle. However, his body, the way the blood pumped through his system, it kept his body from elevating to higher levels so he would not look over buff. Hiruzen supposed that was a good thing, as many underestimate their opponent by just looks alone, so that was good. However, despite his illness and despite how weak he used to be, he was never physically bad than anyone else. He was not talking about movements, but in terms of his height, the only thing that he had off about him was his sunken cheeks, and those are now gone. His eyes had changed into red, and they looked like a reptile, but his complexion wasn't as pale as before, so that was a good thing. Time skip. Naruto was happy. For the first time in his life, he was truly happy. The Hokage finally gave him the go-ahead. He would be joining the academy. He would be making friends. He would be able to become a ninja. He was so happy, so excited. Here he was. It was nighttime. As he was making his way down the street, night was his thing, as he loved to roam these times, not in the daytime. And he wasn't wearing a jacket or anything, just calmly making his way, when he noticed a woman walking by, seeming to be in her late 30s. She saw him, wondering what a kid was doing out this late. However, she smiled at him nicely, as Naruto smiled back at her. His red eyes looked a bit intimidating for her, but it was not like she was going to stay here. However, her gaze wandered for a bit too long, and she wasn't watching where she was going, as she bumped into something, scraping her leg. Naruto heard her whimper as he moved towards her. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked. "Oh, I'm fine, I just scraped my leg," she said. As Naruto's gaze looked down when he saw the blood and the wounded flesh, Naruto blinked as he was on his bed. He was confused as he massaged his eyes, trying to get the sleep out of them. He had no recollection of returning home last night. He hated that because he was used to having good memories, but now he couldn't remember what happened last night. As he looked around, everything was fine though, as he was down in his white t-shirt and his black shorts. He would be starting the academy next week. He hoped this wasn't an issue with not remembering certain things. Naruto made his way as he went to the bathroom to prepare for the day. However, the moment he opened the bathroom door, his stomach dropped. Naruto stood there frozen, completely shocked, unable to even move, as he just looked inside of the bathroom. Brown hair, brown eyes. He remembered her smile, but now her eyes were empty and lost. No life left in them. The woman greeted him last night. She nicked her leg. There was blood. And Naruto found himself trembling. On top of the sink was the upper half of the woman that he saw last night. Her lower half completely gone. As Naruto found his mouth, strangely, he reached up to his face, putting a hand in his mouth and reaching back. As he pulled his hand back to see blood, he screamed, only to cover his mouth a second later. Naruto dropped to the ground and slammed the bathroom door. He curled up and folded up on himself, trembling in absolute fear. He did it again. Time skip. He had no choice but to burn the corpse. Naruto did not sleep for 3 days straight. And that wasn't even bad, as he did not feel that tired. But eventually he did sleep. But when he did, he saw images of himself wrapping the cloth around a woman's mouth that came from his back. He saw himself dragging her to the forest before releasing her. He saw himself hunting her like she was kind of some animal. He saw himself jumping and tearing her arm off, ripping through her stomach, ripping through her legs. Naruto was terrified of himself. He completely lost his mind, having no control over himself, and now he was terrified of himself. He saw blood and flesh, and he completely lost it. He was shaken, gravely so, as he found himself at a loss. What should he do? If he tell the Hokage about this, he's killed 2 innocent people now. That man, he wasn't innocent. What he was going to do to that girl, but the girls, they didn't deserve this. What if she had children? He just took their mother away. He remembered her face quite clearly, but he didn't know her name. What if she had parents looking for her? He just took her away from the world. What kind of monster does that? Naruto spent the rest of the week not really doing anything. The Hokage came to pay him a visit. He was worried about him not seeing him the entire week, as Naruto assured him that he was fine. Hiruzen sat down with him, wondering if there was anything that he needed to talk about. However, Naruto played it cool. He couldn't afford for the Hokage to find out. The man would see him as what he feared the most. He would see him as a monster, because he was, after what he did to those people. But he couldn't allow the Hokage to find out about that. He would never allow him to become a ninja. Perhaps he would lock him up somewhere and throw away the key. After all, he was a monster. So he had to keep this to himself. He just had to. He had to. His cheeriness that he once possessed was slowly dimming away, because he was afraid that he was going to do this again, and again, and again. He tried to push it away from his mind. He tried his best. Naruto made his way towards the academy. He was dressed in a silver t-shirt, short sleeves, his black jacket, his hood up, long sleeve. He was wearing black shorts, sandals on his feet, a bag under the jacket. As he calmly made his way, despite never attending the academy, Naruto knew a lot. Hiruzen had made sure of that as well. As Naruto was a well-read child, he didn't have anything else to put his focus on, so he mostly focused on books. Yes, he was a well-read child. Naruto saw someone, 2 people to be more exact, 2 kids his age, walking down the hall as they were laughing. However, his eyes switched the scene in front of him as he saw their lifeless corpse, with himself ripping them apart. Naruto stepped back, knocking up against the wall in absolute fear. Hey, he blinked. As the guy spoke up to him, "You alright, man?" he asked. Yeah, I'm fine." "Oh, okay." He walked off without a second thought, not really thinking much of what Naruto saw. They were just kids after all. He was a kid as well, but still. Naruto took several deep breaths as he brought his hands up before slamming them on the side of his head, trying to calm himself. He took another deep breath as he pulled out a piece of paper. Room 1A. He made his way towards the room. He was sure that he wasn't late as he made his way inside. This was the start of something new, he told himself. However, he had no idea what this was a start of, what had happened to him, and what he was now. This was the start of something, yes. However, it wasn't anything good. Not at all. These powers might seem to be a blessing from the heavens. However, they were also a curse as well. A very powerful curse that has tainted Naruto and his bloodline forever. Something that will never truly go away. And this was the start of it all. Soon the whole world will know his name. Whether that be for knowing him as a heartless, wicked monster that kills without discretion, a fiend, an abomination, a corrupted beast, or a protector of his people, a shinobi of Konoha. The choices are few and limited. However, if you want to find out, just stay in tune, guys, because I'm going to be ending this episode right here. Yes, if you want a part 2, just comment down below and tell me, and I'll be posting it as soon as possible. So yeah, without further ado, or wasting any more time, how about we get the hell out of here. See you guys soon. Peace, guys.